All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Oh, right. I'll wait for the headphones. This is such a unique experience. Good morning. Welcome to day 3. Just thank you so much for choosing to spend your morning with us today. This is one of our favorite topics. It's very near and dear to our hearts on how to co-sell with our partner ecosystem. It is the only way that we are able to reach all of our customer base across all of the world in every segment. And so we're really excited to share today. So we're going to do a quick context setting. Fabian Grote, who runs this initiative at Microsoft, is going to come up and talk through all the mechanics of how we co-sell together. And then the highlight of the session will be a fireside chat with some of our partners and colleagues here at Microsoft, so you can hear day in and day out how co-sell benefits their business. First, I want to just start with a huge moment of gratitude for your partnership. We have had an incredible Q1, and we are gearing up to have an even better Q2. So again, thank you so much for your partnership, the time that you spend with us here as well in the field and side by side with our customers. I wanted to start with just a little bit of a frame. So the Microsoft Partner Program is how we engage and invest in 100% of our partner ecosystem. We have over 500,000 partners in the ecosystem. We make investments across the whole of the partner lifecycle. We make sure we've got benefits that we're investing to make sure you have access to the latest innovation that we're bringing to market, so you can be building your solutions and services around that technology. You can become customer zero so that your own organization becomes familiar with the technology. Skilling is a massive investment. We've had a lot of sessions this week. I hope you've been able to partake in some of those or visit us at the hub. It is by far our biggest line item on the investment we make in the partner program. And we've really extended that portfolio to include not only technical and certified training, but also the sales training and delivery training. So really making sure that we are supporting you across the end-to-end customer journey, as well as we've introduced some very segment-specific focused training. So how do we go to market in SMB? It looks very different than how we skill up and go to market in enterprise. Our designations and specializations. This is by far how partners differentiate themselves. One of the biggest questions we always get from partners is, how can you help me get more visibility with your Microsoft sales organization? We have the biggest commercial sales organization in the industry. And then the second question is, how can you help drive more awareness with your customers on understanding my value add and what solutions I bring to market? I talked about 500,000 partners in the ecosystem. We have 16,000 partners that have earned the designations. And these designations are aligned to how Microsoft goes to market across the 6 solution areas. And that's by design. We want to make sure we're speaking the same language, we're going to market in harmony. We have 6,000 partners that have earned specializations. The specializations are aligned to what we call solution plays. And our solution plays are how we translate the product value add into customer outcomes, so we can go and have business conversations with our joint customers. And so when you think of 500,000 to 16,000 designated, 6,000 partners who have demonstrated their technical capability against those solution plays, that's how you differentiate yourself. Not only with our sellers, because those solutions, both the services offerings and the IP offerings, are the ones that are prioritized through all of our co-sell engines. That's MSX, which is our internal CRM tool, as well as primary position in our scale co-sell, the marketplace. And so that is by far the best thing that you can do to differentiate yourselves, again, with our sellers, also with our customers. We do a lot of outbound awareness around the program, and so our customers know the partners that have invested and done the hard work across the skilling, across the business performance and the customer success are the ones that we are going to be driving awareness around who they should be partnering with and picking to deliver their customer outcomes. And then finally, I've talked a little bit about co-sell. You're going to hear about that next. But incentives, this is the other big unlock. So again, the designations and specializations are the #1 way to unlock the most value proposition that you can get through Microsoft. I just thought I would leave you with a few numbers. I know that we're all, at our hearts, we're salespeople. We have ambitious goals for our organizations. These are statistics that we have across segments. So this is across the enterprise all the way through into our SME&C business, which is our small and mid-sized enterprise business. And these are statistics that we use every day, all day long with our sellers. When our sellers see these kinds of numbers, greater engagement with the designated partners, we've got 35% more co-sell happening this year. When they start seeing the deal size increases by 10%, they see the accelerated deal closing twice as fast when they're working with Microsoft partners who have earned these designations, and our win rate goes up by 37%. There isn't really much more marketing or selling that we have to do with our internal sales organization. And so I thought I would just leave you with that data. I hope that you enjoy this session. Again, Fabian's going to join me. He's going to go through all of the mechanics on how we co-sell together, all of the investments we've made in the co-sell effort. And then again, you're going to hear directly from some of our colleagues and partners and their journey with co-sell with Microsoft. So Fabian, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Julie. All right, we're going to transition from a Canadian accent to a German accent. Hopefully it's not too much of a shocking moment for you. So what I want to do is, first of all, thank you all for coming here. Thank you all for participating in our little co-sell session, where we want to focus, as Julie said, on a real-life example, talking to partners. Before we do this, it's super important for me that we talk about some newest innovations which we have introduced into the co-selling motion itself. And if you're very active in the space of corporate, as an example, in the space of SME&C, you already know that we have improved dramatically in the way we are sharing early signals to our partners. And our biggest opportunity is that we are sharing signals which are not qualified opportunities at this moment. So especially in the corporate space now, when we look after the customer segmentation of Microsoft, we are taking huge attention to sharing signals with you, which are relevant for you to actually orchestrate a good sales motion with Microsoft, leading to a qualified opportunity. This early engagement also enables us to give you a way more tailored, a way more bigger advanced timeline when it comes to tailored offerings. So what we want to drive here in the joint territory planning at itself is not only an early engagement, we want to drive a more inclusive behavior between our Microsoft sellers with our partners, and we want to give you the opportunity to give solutions and services into the offering which you are advancing as a natural advantage towards the customer. What I think what also becomes very obvious in our territory planning and the advancement of territory planning in a joint motion with our partners is the way how we are collaborating. So the seller-to-seller interaction becomes even more closer. Your partner sellers who are certified, who have the right MAI-CPP understanding, who understand about solution areas, who understand about industries, can collaborate closer with our Microsoft sellers. So that gives you the advantage on the exchange on the account level, the exchange on the customer need. So in general, a much broader opportunity for us to collaborate closer with specific people within your organization and within the Microsoft organization. We all started this now in the space of corporate, and that's happening since the early beginning of 2025. We're going to transition this motion also into the enterprise space. That takes time for us, right? We are collecting learnings in the corporate segment in order to inform our enterprise teams how we can do it best in regards to the seller-to-seller interaction, but also in regards to the right quality of signals we want to share with you to get to a qualified opportunity. The last thing I want to leave you with is we listen to your feedback. And what is important, especially within this joint planning, is that we are engaging collaboratively on early signals, but that we also engage collaboratively on the right platform. So what we invite you to is sharing leads with us, right? When you see an opportunity with your customers, we always emphasize the importance of you sharing those leads through Partner Center with Microsoft. Maybe a call from Microsoft is not going to happen in the next 24 hours. Maybe a call from Microsoft is not happening at all. Maybe we know about the opportunity. But what we want to make sure is that we see your engagement, your motivation to also share something with us, to actually activate a very cohesive co-selling motion between both parties, you as a partner and us as Microsoft. The other thing which I want to highlight on this slide, the seller to drive opportunity to a qualified motion, the best thing you can do is to have it pre-qualified to a level where you feel confident that the lead, what you're sharing with us, is meaningful and that the seller can actually see that's an opportunity for them to advance this lead within Microsoft in the collaboration with certain other roles who might be cloud solution area focused or industry focused. So really pay attention to the quality, pay attention to the way how you're selling your value as a company and the value to the customer, also to the Microsoft seller when you share something with us. Last but not least, when I think about that, it's always very important that we track our engagement, right? Like make sure that you see who of your sellers are very advanced in the co-selling motion with Microsoft, who understand about collaborating with certain roles. You heard from me during MCAP Start, you heard from me during the last year's session around MSM, Microsoft Customer Engagement Methodology, right? Like adopting the understanding of our roles and responsibilities between Microsoft and partners becomes extremely critical to show the value to our sellers and show the value to our customers as a joint vehicle of delivery of more advanced opportunity management. So when you think about all these different angles of territory planning at the moment, when you think about the strategy going into enterprise, what I will never forget is also SMB. SMB is our big market of millions of customers where we are advancing with a very clear strategy with our frontier distributors, right? We're going to have someone on stage in just a moment who has worked in the distributor landscape since a long, long time. We are trying now in the panel discussion to really give you a better feeling on how does actually co-selling look like with a solution partner, and how does co-selling look like with a service partner, more focused on services, and then also looking to the distribution space, right? Where we hold our distributors, fairly honest, very accountable on the reach into these millions of customers in the SMB space. So with no further ado, I would love to invite my friends here on stage. We're going to have Chris Woodin. He's our SVP for Solutions and Alliances with Softchoice. We're going to have SAURABH RANA, who's our SVP with Global Partnership and Alliances at Citystech. And we're going to have Brennan on stage, who's my new colleague in EMEA, who is responsible for go-to-market and has a long, long, long history within the distributor landscape. So, gentlemen, if you want to join me on stage, that would be awesome. Thank you so much. Chris, good to have you.
Thank you, Fabian.
All righty. So as I said, what we want to do today and what we learned also from last year is we want to make things more feasible. We really want to have a conversation around the way how you made co-selling a success with Microsoft within your companies and what you see as the biggest opportunity for the audience here on how can we accelerate co-selling together. What we also heard last year, you want to have precise examples of this thing of MSM, right? Like after our session, what I heard is, I don't really understand how can I adopt MSM into my methodology. And we from Microsoft, we don't want you to just copy paste and trying to put something artificial into your organization. We want that it's meaningful to you. We want that there's an adoption which is making, I would say, like big steps for your integration with Microsoft sellers for your co-selling motion. So we're going to take a little bit of a step into the world of MSM, but also what we want to do is we want to understand how these three gentlemen see the different world of co-selling when you think about solutions, services, and the distributor landscape. So why don't we start with a short introduction so everybody understand what your pivot is, where you're going to sit in your organization, how you work with Microsoft, and then we're going to go right into the questions. Chris, if you want to start.
Sure. So Softchoice is a North American-focused solution provider, really focused on the SME and C segments. We lead with Microsoft solutions and then build out the entire opportunity with ecosystem partnerships around that. And excited to talk about how we've been using MSM as a guiding principle for that strategy.
Perfect, Chris. Thank you. Saurabh.
SAURABH RANA. I represent Citystech. Citystech is a Microsoft healthcare and life sciences industry partner. We've been a Microsoft partner for the last 2 decades, and that's the sole industry that we focus on. And it's been a pleasure being on stage with you.
Thank you.
Good. And then I'm Brennan Murphy, day 14 at Microsoft. So I now run the EMEA Partner Marketing Organization. But prior to that, I spent 7 years in distribution. Prior to that, I worked at a managed service provider. So I spent an awful lot of my career in and around the Microsoft ecosystem.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us today. What we want to do is we actually want to start first with framing co-sell. So maybe Chris, Saurabh, and Brennan, you want to start with what is your understanding of co-sell and how did you adopt it into your business model to better understand how you grew your business throughout the last years, actually, in the collaboration with Microsoft. Chris, if you don't mind starting with that, that would be awesome.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we really lead with Microsoft in our go-to-market strategy, and so at the core of that is how we build our go-to-market strategy around co-sell. I would say, you made the comment earlier, Fabian, about how to adapt to MSM. One of the challenges we had was, if you look at all the roles involved in the sales cycle, you're trying to get each one to play a particular role in the sequence of MSM, and many of them report into different departments, so you don't have a singular control over how to do that.
Right.
And we were seeing that the cost of that was really affecting the tightness of our co-sell and joint planning with Microsoft. So we made a decision about a year ago to actually reorient some of our key roles around the MSM formula. This went so far as to changing job descriptions, performance goals, even compensation. In some cases, we even put similar roles in the same team because we were that serious about making sure that we could create a really unified methodology that mapped to MSM. It also helped that we believed in the MSM formula. Whether it was from Microsoft's benefit or not, it was a very sound formula. So since we've done that, we've seen the level of co-sell partnership really increase. And one of the indicators we have for this is that our adoption of MCI incentives across the 3 CSAs has really shot up in the last 6 months, which is a really objective indicator to the success of the new co-sell arrangement.
Beautiful. So how was the feeling for you when you looked into co-sell, when you adopted MSM maybe in your organization?
So I think I'll be really practical with the audience here. You got to embrace MSM and you've got to understand MSM. And for me, it was easier being a Microsoft alum. I was trained on it. So it was easier for me to take that learning and take it back to my organization. I think the practical thing that we did very quickly was we looked at all the stages of MSM and we overlaid our sales process. And we had to first do that mapping exercise. We really worked through on what stage meant what, for what type, and then what role fit into that, right? So to building on you were focusing on the role, we were also focusing on the stages, and then trying to align all the 3 together. And that clarity, and there was a lot of pushback, a lot of the sellers, the frontline sellers in our industry team were like, why do we need to know that? And the whole key, and the point I was trying to land there with them was that if you don't speak their language and you don't know how the deal is progressing from a Microsoft perspective, how do you anticipate it'll move for you? Because you're doing it collaboratively, right? It's a co-sell motion that you're doing it together. And I think that resonated very well with them. So it's been a journey for the last 2 years. We've been trying to make sure that they understand MSM. We're doing seller trainings. Our PDM comes in, and with all the co-sell team, we actually have a biannual process where we engage with all the frontline sellers within the industry. And that, I think to your point, I'll build on to what you said. You spoke about funding and investments. We saw the same. For us, it's of course eSIFs and all the other dollars that are going in at the front end to the customer. We've seen a huge uplift in that. And I think the stat that, one of the stats that you had was 10% in terms of deal size growth.
Yep.
We did the number crunching thanks to you. For the last 2 years, we've seen it go up by 32%, the average deal size for us as a company. And that's together with Microsoft. So,
very good. Thank you. Thank you. And very strong metric. I think when I think about 32%, I mean, that's far above average, right? And that's by far a higher acceleration like we have seen before we actually introduced MSM to our partner. Yeah, that's awesome. Brendan.
So for distribution, we really focused on SMB, and SMB is scale. You need to make sure that you are building a velocity and a reach, but also doing so in a way that isn't overly high touch because of the scale that you need to get to. And for me, the MSM framework provided the structure, and especially combined with the win formulas, as to how we can utilize all the things available from Microsoft, going through from all of the campaign in a box assets through to the Microsoft programs, the incentives, and really driving that rigor and making sure that all of our team were accountable and understanding where they fit into that life cycle and how they fit in with those customers. What I found interesting is originally there was a little bit of challenge in getting that into the organization, showing them the new methodology. But once people really started to reflect on how it worked for them as sellers, they started to embed it. And we also saw it going into other parts of the organization. Because I agree to your point to say it's not just a methodology that is specific to Microsoft, but it is just a very robust sales methodology and way of approaching the market.
That's awesome. So what I hear is MSM enabled you for better co-selling, especially due to the adoption of roles and responsibility. Clarity, who you're working with. Stage clarity, so where are we in the opportunity development? Where do we want to be together in the velocity of this deal? And then actually also making it transparent how KPIs are growing, because co-selling works through the sales methodology, right? What I'd like to understand from you, because you all have very different pivots towards customer segments. You have very different pivots towards the solutions versus service offerings versus the way how you, back in the days, Brandon, would have hold resellers accountable for the success with Microsoft. So tell me a little bit more how MSM and the associated co-selling brought you bigger reach into markets, maybe bigger reach into other industries. That would be super interesting to understand.
So I'll take that one on. So for CTS Tech, because we are healthcare and life sciences only, we go deeper in that process. And what we've done from a co-selling perspective is we build a lot of solutions that are on the Microsoft tech stack. And then the first immediate notion that we have is how do we get them onto the marketplace? And then how do we make that well-known and well understood by the industry teams within Microsoft? So that's a big motion that we drive, and that's something that's inherent to us as an industry ISV partner for Microsoft. And then when we're looking at the measurable outcomes, one of the things that we've seen is we've been trying to look at how is our sales stages progressing? Are we seeing any deviation? Are we seeing any increase? And I'm happy to share that we again, thanks to you, we did a whole mapping of where are we today? Has there been any impact, tangible impact to our sales velocity? And yes, we saw a 47% decrease in our sales cycle so that we can close deals faster.
Very good.
So that for me was key, because what it's telling us is from the time we are creating an opportunity or co-creating it with Microsoft to the time when the statement of work is signed for us as a service organization, that has really decreased. And it's not across the board, but at least in the last 2 years, we've seen that that's been a tangible impact that we can see. So it's working.
I might build on that and maybe talk to my peers in the room who come from a legacy LSP or reseller background. At Softchoice, we have a little over 7,000 customers that transact Microsoft Cloud through us, and we've been working with a lot of these customers, like many of you have, for 20, 30 years. And let's be honest, a lot of those transactions decades ago were built on the transaction. There wasn't services integrated. And the whole business strategy is how we transition all these customers to being solutions and services led. I would say following the MSM formula and grounding that in joint planning is the most important thing we can do to transforming the relationship that we have with all these customers to be truly services led with Microsoft support, so that we get to a point where there's not any customer remaining that's simply transacting, but truly adopting Microsoft technology through our services with the transaction integrated, of course, for greater value. We're not all the way there yet, but I would say we continue to accelerate the pace to that very last customer by using the MSM formula.
Very good. Brendan, how was it for you when you were still working for Arrow, for example, on the distributor side?
Yes, I think especially in activating into new markets and especially with our resellers expanding their reach, the MAI-CPP program, which took me a while to get that acronym through in one breath, but has really been a robust way of us helping our partners go for that journey. So from skilling through to unlocking all the assets to getting solution partner designations and those advanced specializations, they enabled our partners to demonstrate their skills and capabilities out to the channel and really show customers why they should work with them across the different cloud solution areas. And so I think that is really an essential part for the resellers as they go into new markets, as they go into new customers. And it was a really great thing, the amount of visibility that Microsoft have given to that program. So customers know if partners have achieved these, we know that they've been vetted, we know there are certain levels of capabilities and skills we can expect from them. And then connected with that, I'd also say the things like Azure Accelerate and the other programs enabled us to go across all of our markets in a consistent way and unlock that value in a really repeatable and scalable fashion.
Very good. When you think about the way how you utilize on programs and the utilization actually also of incentives, right? You talked about the way how you got bigger and deeper into a certain industry vertical. You talked about the way how you leverage joint planning. We're going to come to this in a moment. You talked about the way how we are utilizing MAI-CPP in order to get our resellers into the right motion of reach, frequency, and yield. what do you think are the most important Microsoft benefits, I would describe them, which were actually accelerating your work with the customer itself, right? If it is ESIF related, it is incentive related. Can you talk along those lines maybe?
Yeah.
So for Citius Tech, I think what's critical for us is to understand the solution plays that are out there and what is emerging and where does Microsoft want us to focus on. And that's the first piece that we do. We are also at the front line with all the customers day in and day out. Citius Tech spans as a healthcare partner of yours within enterprise as well as in SME and C.
Right.
So we straddle both those subsegments, and they're completely different in terms of their engagement model as a customer and how we need to engage with them. And it's been, because of the sales plays, it allows us to very quickly align our solutions that we have, map it, and then it becomes an easier conversation with the solution engineers at Microsoft or with the industry advisors that you have. And that drives a further win rate for us because we quickly understand the conversation that we need to have, the kind of priority that the customer has, and then we go from there. And I think that role alignment and that conversation and doing it early, frankly, is the key to a lot of the success that we are seeing today.
Great.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think the solution plays and the frameworks help give such a strong head start to partners to ensure they understand all the things that are available from Microsoft, the messaging, the localization that Microsoft have done on assets as well, if you're working across multiple markets, is really helpful in that journey. And then I think, obviously, technology is moving at such a rapid pace. Being able to use that and all the things Microsoft provide in terms of skilling is helping to ensure that all of the sellers and the technical teams are able to unlock that opportunity at scale, and all of our partners are able to deliver against that. And then obviously the incentives allow organizations to invest into that and to make sure that they're building for the future and really driving a long-term profitable business.
Perfect. Chris, anything to add?
Maybe I just say, similar to what was mentioned, it gives us a common vernacular to work with Microsoft in the field. I mean, it's one thing to instruct our people how to follow MSM, and I talked about the way that we've reorganized our operating model and support. It's another thing then to say, here's how the MCI program for a given CSA exactly works through a sales cycle, and it's a way to make sure that 550 account executives at Softchoice are working through a solution opportunity the same way every time, because we know we have to follow a very specific methodology to unlock the full benefits that Microsoft has made available. And so it's really standardized the way that we engage with Microsoft, that mass scale across SME and C, and it's a huge advantage. And I will say just selfishly, when you get good at it, you develop a reputation for it, it actually does attract more business, I would say, from Microsoft, which we're experiencing in those markets that we've really concentrated the execution.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Chris, Saurabh, and Brendan. When you think about all the advantages that we just discussed, right? Like, it all sounds super good. We have very strong metrics, which are actually proving that we have a higher deal velocity, that we are running bigger win rates, we are having a bigger deal size. Let's talk about challenges, though. We want to be very transparent also about the things, what you just mentioned, Chris, in regards to the adoption time, right? Like maybe sellers who are not immediately convinced that MSM or co-selling with Microsoft is the holy grail in order to get successful. So let's have an open mindset and let's really talk about the early challenges you have seen within your organization when you were adopting MSM, when you were trying to educate for co-selling with Microsoft. Can you comment on that?
So 2 challenges, and I'll be open. The first is, of course, adoption. We had to create that engagement with our sellers and really convince them that you have to understand the vernacular. I like that word. The vernacular that you need to engage with. So that was one challenge, and you had to repeat it. So it's not like a one and done. You have to keep it. You've got to have a rhythm of a training process within your organization that then comes up. And every time when I'm talking to, we've got a lot of strategic accounts that we work with you on in the enterprise space. And when I'm talking to the client partner, I'm very clear in saying that, okay, have you now understood and embraced MSM? Have you now understood and engaged? When you're talking to this person on this opportunity and you've got 20 within that same customer, are you aware of what stages it's at? Right. And then are you both aligned on what's coming next? Because the the discussion on Inspire is separate. When you're talking about developing the deal and the opportunity, you've got to talk about POCs and assessments, and you've got to be aligned on the same vernacular on what you need to do in that phase. And then we move from there to designing and then proof of value, again, you both need to be moving in sync, right? So that's a challenge, and there's a continuous education. So point number one is education, and it's continuous. Second, I think the challenge is the coverage. We are still a smaller organization, right? We may be 10,000 across the world, but then at the front line within North America, you'll have around 250 sellers, whereas the mapping to a Microsoft team is so much larger, right? So the coverage, I think, is point number two, that's our challenge, and we continue to mitigate that on a daily basis. And the moment you start building trust and alignment between one account and one seller, it just becomes viral from there. So I think you have to take that, and there's a time and cycle for any partner where it really kicks in. And when that flywheel kicks in, that becomes really fantastic. And you can then see the results after. And what you're seeing are like a couple of 3 years of work that are now driving some of these results.
All right.
I definitely agree with the feedback. And I think especially that point on the adoption within the sellers and the partners that we worked with, they had their own sales methodology. They're like, we know how to sell these products. But the more that they then looked at it and the ability to align all the things that are available in a systematic and scalable way was really impactful to them. But also recognizing MSM is the foundation, partners then need to differentiate on top of that, show their unique skills and their services. And so I think once organizations realize this isn't kind of the cookie cutter, we're all going to look the same, but more, I'm going to access and unlock everything available and still demonstrate my value to the channel, that really started to change how we looked at it. And I think the other thing a lot of sellers, especially in our earlier days with MSM, really kind of didn't lock into immediately was the fact that once you have sold a product, that is not the end of your sales journey. And that's what I love about the framework, that the middle of it is, I've sold the product, but then you actually need to drive the utilization, drive it into the organization, manage and optimize, and make sure you're going through that kind of cycle.
Yep.
I think once the sellers realize by doing those additional stages, you then get back into the upsell cycle, you get into cross-sell, there are more and more that you can then build onto this deal. They started to see that it's not just a single journey, but a flywheel that you can keep going through and expanding within that account.
Beautiful.
You asked us to be candid.
Yeah.
I'll share probably
Not
some
too
candor
candid, maybe.
on behalf of some of my peers in the room. You know, the past 12 months, maybe 14 at this point, created one of the larger headwinds and risks in our partnership with Microsoft, given the type of partner Softchoice is, a large-scale solution provider. And the reason for that risk is because of the rapid acceleration and change of programs that are utilized to help SME and C customers consume Microsoft technologies. And I'm talking about EA versus CSP, right, and MCA. And I don't mean to suggest that that's the most important thing, of course, when we're talking to a customer. It's not. The most important thing is the selection of Microsoft technologies to drive the business. The reality is, when you get into the sales cycle, the choice of licensing vehicle or consumption vehicle is still very important. And Microsoft made adjustments, announced in the summer of last year to accelerate the transformation of commercial agreements that had effect for both partners as well as SME and C sellers. And the effect of that, as we came into calendar 2026, was there was a rapid dispersion, I would say, in the activity between a lot of channel partners and Microsoft sellers. And what I mean by that is that I think you had channel partners like Softchoice probably over-indexing on creating value around CSP vehicles, not at the same pace that traditionally Microsoft sellers were.
Yep.
And where this would show up as you're going through a sales cycle, and we're talking about the adoption of E5 and Copilot and all these great things, but then we would create confusion for the customer because we'd be talking about different ways to consume the technology. And that confusion that we create when the Microsoft seller and the partner seller are saying different things is kryptonite to a deal. Can't have that happen. We have to be lockstep. So the solution to that obviously is joint planning and then following the MSM formula together, using the MSM methodology to maintain that tight tissue as we work through it. And when we do identify that there's a disagreement in how we want to do this, well, we can work through that together on the back end before it shows up in front of the customer. I am really, really proud of the progress we made in calendar 2026 internally and with Microsoft. And I give huge credit to Ralph's sales organization, especially in the Americas, about how we went all in, utilizing joint planning and the MSM formula to get ahead of these potential diversions. And as a result, the number of times that we see that confusion show up in front of the customer is a tiny fraction now of what it was, let's say, in January and February of this year.
Very good feedback. Thank you, Chris. Thank you both. I believe, especially to your point, what we always need to remember when we talk about MSM, when we talk about our methodology, the customer is in the center. So anything we do is always customer-centric. It needs to be a joint effort between our partners and our Microsoft sellers. And you touched on it, Chris, and you also did, SAURABH. When we think about the customer plan in enterprise, we do a long-term plan to actually analyze what is the need of the customer and how do we actually bring this need to a solution with our partners. Early engagement, not only through joint planning, but also in the customer plan in enterprise, is giving us this transparency on what is the strategy, the joint strategy for the customer, and how do we bring it beyond just the win. Brendan, you just touched on it on consumption. What do we do in regards to upsell and cross-sell? So beautiful summary, and thank you for the openness on also showing some clearly critique voices and the way how we improved in our co-sell journey. I want to leave us with the remaining minutes we have with a little bit of a rapid fire. And the rapid fire should be purely in order to understand better for everyone here in the room what your advice is, right? The first question here, and you should be super laser focused on a short and snappy answer on that one. The single most effective co-sell practice you have seen in your organization. Chris, you go first.
Relentless preparation before joint planning and co-sell sessions, going in knowing exactly which customers we want to talk about, what pipeline we're developing, and specifically what role we want the Microsoft seller to play in supporting us with that opportunity.
Perfect. SAURABH.
Mapping the Microsoft account team, knowing all the players in that value cycle, being aligned with them early, being aligned with them, and so that in the consistent sales cycle, you don't miss a beat. Because to your earlier point, that's where a lot of things might fall out. If you're talking different languages or if you're having different priorities, the deal's gone.
Perfect. Brendan?
I would say embracing co-selling with Microsoft and actually working together, because ultimately partner success is Microsoft success. And so showing the sellers that this is really a robust way of collaborating, increasing deal velocity, unlocking all the features and functions available from Microsoft is really going to be impactful for them.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Looking ahead, what is the biggest co-sell opportunity for you? Chris, you again go first.
Okay. I know it's dirty to say this, but the expirations of a customer's subscription or agreement does create compelling events. And we're going to leverage the heck out of that event over the next 12 months to focus the customer's commitment to Microsoft AI and security technologies. We're not going to let a single renewal opportunity go by without committing that customer to the Microsoft AI and security platform, and that means 12 months of preparation before that. That's the biggest opportunity for us, I would say, over the next 12.
Thank you, Chris.
For an industry-focused ISV, I think the biggest, as we look ahead, is enablement. You have to be relentless in embracing the tech stack and the changes that are coming from Microsoft. There's, if you talk about health, there's the healthcare agent orchestrator. You've got Agent 365. All of those are core technologies that we've got to embrace really quickly and have a point of view, and then come in with a clear understanding of how the customer, organization will get impacted in the right way. And therefore, enablement always for us is number one. We keep looking ahead, but then focusing it on agentic work.
Perfect.
I'm going to go into overlap with both of you, because I agree. I think renewals create such a compelling moment, but then also all the announcements that we've seen at Ignite around the new technology and the impact that can make for customers is really driving that momentum. And I think for partners to be able to really demonstrate that value and build trust with their customers, going into the accounts with Microsoft side by side, the organization that has created this technology, really helps to kind of validate the impact that it can make and ensure that we're increasing that deal velocity.
Beautiful. Thank you, gentlemen. Last one, which is more a summary question. What is the advice to the audience how to start co-selling with Microsoft if you have never done it before?
Okay, I'll get your first win. Nothing like a success that engages and drives engagement with Microsoft. You've got to show that you have the chops as a partner, and you can demonstrate capability with that first win. And you just can't stop there. You get that first win, and then you talk, and you take it to town with Microsoft. You talk about it, talk about why you won, what are the key credentials from a partner perspective that made you win it, what was the Microsoft tech stack that landed on top of what you were trying to do, and then create that flywheel within the organization. Get your first win.
I totally agree with that. And so to get that first win, the advice I would have if you're early in your co-sell journey is optimize for precision versus breadth. Don't try to boil the ocean with 400 SME sellers, but pick the few that you can manufacture success early, over-index on that preparation we talked about, manufacture those wins, and then those wins will be the currency that you can use to scale out to the masses later.
And I would add on to those to say, make sure you have the solution partner designations, advanced specializations that prove your capabilities and build that trust between the organizations, and then embrace MSM. It will make sure that you are utilizing all of the different assets and features available from Microsoft to be able to work together very closely.
Awesome, perfect. Beautiful advices, I think beautiful insights. I really appreciate the openness and your time today to join me on stage. And I think it was very valuable for you to actually hear from partners how co-selling and the adoption of MSM is going to give you more advantage in the market together with Microsoft. With this, I think I'm going to close the session. We're going to stick around a little bit. So if you have questions to us, please come up. Please ask those questions. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for prioritizing the co-sell session at this Ignite. And see you next year, I hope. Thank you.